All right, everybody's coming in. See a lot of familiar names, a lot of people who have been at some of our coffee and combos before. It's good to see all of our returnees coming back, and it's nice to meet all of you who are new. And this is our first one of the year, so I'm super excited about this. And this is what Josh has referred to as his most important message ever yet.
In a long time, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna head into this presentation in just a second. I have a few just housekeeping things for those who didn't see in the description of this webinar. If you are trying to get that coffee, which I know all of us are, you need to have registered with a authentic education email address. If you didn't, I saw a lot of Gmails in there. If you didn't, you can email me afterwards with your school address and we'll make sure you get that coffee. And you also have to take the exit survey at the end. So those are just two little things that you need to do to get your coffee. I know what I'm gonna get. I'm in a matcha tea latte kind of season of my life. So that's what I'll be doing with mine. So put in the chat what you're gonna do with yours. I don't care. But
and where you're from. I always like to see where people are joining from.
What kind of coffee you want to get and where you're from in the chat just to wake that thing up. And I will be watching it throughout the duration of the presentation and passing along any questions that you have in there. And we'll also have time at the end for questions. So, and on that really long-winded intro, I'm going to hand it over to Josh.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to hit this button and see if I can. Oh, yeah, you did it. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to learn a lot together, and we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to cover a lot of ground. The way I'm seated in my office, I don't have a great line of sight to the chat. So Kate, just feel free to, like, if you need to jump in and, like, if something's going on in the chat, whatever, don't hesitate to interrupt. So that would be great. And like I said, we're going to cover a lot of ground today. This is something that I did. Kate was right. I referred to this as the most important thing that I've said in a long time, because I was reading a book just recently, and the author said there's two reasons why someone would give this type of presentation. One is because they're an expert in it, or two, because they've struggled with it so long professionally that they're finally getting to the place where it's starting to make sense. And they have some bits of information that they're ready to start to share. And I'm definitely more on that side of things. For years, in case we haven't met, I'll do a real quick introduction. So my name is Josh. I'm Director of Education Initiatives with Trafera. I have my email address on the slide there. I'll pop it back up here in just a second. I also have my contact information at the end. But for years now, as an educator, and as I've been in administration actually longer than I was in the classroom, I've been really struggling to identify the role that the human aspect of education. And I think for a long time, I've been personally troubled by seeing the amount of investment that we put into things to build the right platform and to have the right learning environment and to build the right school and to have the right Chromebooks and to get the right iPads. And we put a lot of energy into the things. And to me, it seems like we're not talking enough about investing in the people that really matter. And so I've been wrestling with this for a decade or more. And I'm finally now getting to a place where I've got some visual representation of some of the ideas that I've been struggling with, and I want to share some of that stuff with you today. And hopefully some of this will be an inspiration. And, we'll use the chat, as Kate was saying, use the chat to, if I say something that resonates with you, feel free to jump in there and, cheer me on in the chat. Or if you have a question about it, feel free to interrupt that way as well. Here's what I hope to cover today. I want to be able to answer these three questions. Number one, what's our current relationship like with the instructional resources that we have? That may seem like a super obvious question or an obvious answer, but I think that there are things there that we can do to unpack that very simple question. What is the nature of our relationship with those instructional resources? I also want to ask or answer this second one. What is the research telling us about teacher efficacy and the human aspect of education? And then the third and final thing that I want to make sure that we do, I'm just going to take 2 minutes at the very end of this and talk about Trafera's response to this. The last 2 or 3 minutes of this are going to be something that's specifically interesting for Trafera customers, but whether you're buying from us or not, just stay with me for the last couple of minutes, because even if you're not buying from us, I feel like those last couple of minutes of the webinar, that the time that we have together, are going to be good for everybody. So the way I see it, there are 3 of the most basic fundamental elements of formal education. Now, there could be 100 or more, or thousands of different aspects that contribute to this, but when we break it all down, it comes down to these 3 simple little elements. Number 1, the teacher and the student, and then the content that we are charged with teaching. Now, the teacher and the student are pretty simple to define, right? There's not a lot of question there. But the content can sometimes be a little bit of a question mark as to what we're even really talking about here. When I say content, what I'm talking about is the state issued standards, whatever the Department of Education in your state says 3rd graders have to be able to do by the end of the 3rd grade. That's what I'm talking about. Sometimes, though, that could also mean like the soft skills that we try to instill in our children, like, you know, the ability to collaborate with other children, or to be a global citizen or a digital citizen. One thing that we are normally not talking about when we talk about the content is the technology tool. We think about the technology tool as being a vehicle by which we can get students to mastery of those content standards, but we try not to make the content the thing that we're really going after. Okay, so with those 3 elements defined, I want to show you 2 different models that I have used to illustrate the relationship between these 3 things. Number 1 is this thing that I'm calling the platform model. You can't Google this term. It's not, to my knowledge, no one else is calling it this. This is just something I'm calling it for the sake of this webinar. So the platform model works like this. It's all built around this really beautiful, really amazing platform. And around that platform, we would see content, right? So somebody's going to go out and create content, put the content into the platform, and then we can add layers of assessment tools and all kinds of things that go into it. And this model can go on out and out and out and out with more and more rings. You know, I just, for simplicity's sake, I kind of ended it here, but you can imagine like a student engagement thing or a parent communication thing, and all of these things kind of get surrounded around this platform. And probably the easiest way to imagine this is to imagine like a traditional, like a textbook model, right? So in a textbook model, you would have the textbook itself becomes like the brand or the corporation, whoever it is, Pearson, McGraw-Hill, or whatever, they have a solution, right? And they start building things into that solution, like 3 or 4 PhD, you know, very talented educators go into a room, they come out a year later, they've written a textbook that would be the content. And then, of course, we have a series of things that go with that, like workbook series and, you know, manipulatives and things that you can pour out of the drawers and get students wrapped around and doing things with it. The big idea here is that teachers, people like me and you and our students, would just buy into this system. And the reason this has been around for so long, and the reason it's been so effective for so long, is because we can take really the expertise of just a few people right here at the core of the platform, and you get just a few people that have a lot of very specific skills, and all the other people that are just using the platform can kind of come around it and benefit from their expertise. And as good as this sounds, like, who doesn't, this is functioning like a one-stop shop for everything that you need for your students to empower that learning experience. And as good as this sounds, there's actually a lot of problems with this model. I'm going to go through a few of them with you. Number 1, this model doesn't seem to empower the educator at all. I mean, if you look at where the educators are, they're out here around the margins, right? Where's the educator's voice in this platform? It's not there. What happens is the school district will come and show up at your door and say, here's our new literature series, and This is what we're teaching this year. And the teachers left out around the margins. They don't have an input on the creation and the curation of this platform. It also, in fact, I think it does just the opposite of empower the educator. I think it creates a dependency on the platform. I'm going to show you something that I'm really embarrassed by it. I almost don't even want to show you this next slide because it is an embarrassment for this, but in the effort, I'm going to be vulnerable just in the effort to illustrate this point, that when we have that one-stop shop thing, what can happen for teachers is we've got that dependency. So we put very little investment into our own instructional design because we're just relying on the content. And I knew that this was true for me as an educator. I don't know if you guys remember those spiral bound lesson plan books. They were like a fake leather lesson plan book. And you would open it up, and then inside there would be like a little 2-inch by 2-inch square. And you would write your lesson plan for the day inside that little square, where I knew that that was me. And so I went back and I dug out my old lesson plans. And this is a screenshot from my old lesson. This is from like 2000 and I don't know, 2007, 2008, something like that. But this is the lesson planning that I was doing. You know, I'd show up on Monday and teach the chapter 5 point slope form, you know, to give the quiz out of the book, you know, on Wednesday. And when I look at that now, is it any wonder why I have so little student engagement or so little student buy-in when I was putting in such little effort into my own instructional design? That, you know, you reap what you sow. I mean, a lot of people believe that, and I believe that too. With me putting in such little effort, I was getting very little effort back from my kids, and I think it was because I was over reliant on the platform. Number 3 problem with this is it's expensive. I can't even really talk about this because I get so mad to think about the times where I've found something that I think is a really valuable resource. And once we're dependent on it, we'll pay. I can't even talk about it. It's very frustrating to me to see that this is happening so much in education, but these platforms can be very expensive. I also don't like the fact that they're so fixed. Those really brilliant people at the center of that platform that are writing all that curriculum, I trust that they are very intelligent and they know what they're doing, but they don't know my students. And they don't know yours either. And so it's hard for them, it's maybe impossible for them to create something that is specifically designed for that learner when they've never met that learner, you know? And we see that it happens quite often. And then the last one that I want to end with, I could go on with things that bother me about this platform model, but the last thing I'll say here is that this model really only exists in formal education. You did not learn to talk this way. You didn't learn to ride a bike this way. You didn't learn to cook this way. You learned to cook because your grandmother was a good cook, and you would stand under her feet in the kitchen and say, why are you doing that? How much of that do you put in? Do you always grease the pan this way? You know, this is the way learning takes place in the real world. But in education, we've got this other way of doing it that only exists in education. And so I'm firmly committed to this idea that there's a better way to do it. And so I've developed this model that I'm calling the people model. Again, this is not a term that you can Google because I don't know that anybody else is really thinking about this. But the people model looks drastically different. It's built around me and you. It's built around teachers, and we're at the center of this thing. And now what we do is, with the teacher being at the center, then we can surround that teacher with pedagogical strategies that will empower her, with educational technology tools that will empower her and make her better, make her more effective at what she's doing. And then from there, using those strategies and using those technology tools, she can go out and find content from all over the world, you know, from any place. And then she can use that strategy, that pedagogical tool, that technology tool to pull in content from various places. Now, here's the great thing that I really love about this model is these strategies that we're looking at don't just correlate just simply one-to-one with a specific content. No, instead, those same strategies that we learned can be used to connect with all kinds of different content, right? Not just the one thing that you learned it from. And then from there, the beauty of it is it keeps the main thing. It's all about that teacher, right? We're not relying on some platform to come in and save the day. The teacher can save her own day. She's not got just the one little tool in the toolbox. She's got a whole garage full of tools that she can go to at a moment's notice because she knows her kids. And she can go to those and pull out that strategy. You'll pull out that educational technology tool, and she can use that in that learning environment to connect with the kids that matter. I want to pause right there just for a second and just check in with you guys. You can use the chat or however you want to do it. If you even feel brave enough, you're welcome to unmute and contribute to this. The rest of the training I'm going to talk about some research here. I'm going to talk about a little bit of Trafera's impact, but I want to just hit the pause button real quick to make sure that we're all on the same page about these two models before we go on.
We don't have any questions that have come up yet, but I love Shirley's comment. The old model is predictable for overall administration of the system by school boards. The new model will scare the heck out of them.
Yeah, because if you look at it, I was going to make this point earlier, but this thing here is the opposite of a one-stop shop, right? It's a mess. In fact, Kate's she's our graphic designer, and I had this illustration done up a different way that was much cleaner. It was easier to read. And I started to send this to you, Kate, and let you mock it up this way. But then I was like, you know what? No, I like the messy one, because this is the world I want to teach in right here. The one that the teacher is enabled and she's empowered and she's able to go out and find content. This is the absolute opposite of a one-stop shop. This is a teacher piecing things together from here and there, from high and low, to make sure that the students are the ones that are benefiting, not some company. And by the way, I want to be clear about this. I'm not an anti-textbook guy. I know that there's some Twitter accounts that I follow that are like, ditch the textbook. That's not who maybe someday I might be in that camp. Right now, I can tell you at this stage of my life, I'm not anti-textbook. I pray to heaven that one of these content bubbles is a textbook or a textbook platform, something. I think those instructional resources are great. I'm for it, but I'm not going to give up my creative freedom for theirs. I'm not going to be a slave to that content. I don't know how else to say it. I'm not anti-textbook, but I just don't want to sell out to it. I'm just trying to read the chat a little bit to make sure we're doing good. Okay. Let's keep going. Because I'm developing these models, I don't want us to think that this is just Josh's wild imagination, to think that I'm just out here doing this on my own. I'm not. There's a mountain of research that supports this idea. And these researchers are standing at the tops of these mountains screaming, we have to invest in people. I could choose from 10 or 12 different people that I've came across that are studying this, that have books published on this idea that we could cite for evidence. I'm choosing to do John Hattie just because I'm more familiar with him than anybody else, but we could really put anybody's research up here behind me. This dude named John Hattie, in case you're not familiar with his research, he does something called effect size, which effect size can be complicated. And we could do another half an hour on effect size, and I don't want to take that much time. So I'm going to give you the simplified kind of the nuts and bolts of effect size and how this works. You can imagine this timeline. Oh gosh, I dropped my clicker, sorry. Imagine this little timeline. It's it's a little bit awkward the way this is shaped, but we have, 0 off center a little bit, and then everything to the left of, here it is, everything to the left of 0 represents learning loss. And the things that go on this timeline are, I'm saying timeline, I mean number line, sorry. The things that go on this number line are like either strategies or tools, like technology tools, or events or circumstances in a child's education. Okay, so anything to the left of 0 would be representing learning loss, like summer break goes in that category. Not that summer break is a bad thing. No one really thinks that summer break is a bad thing, but we do know that coming back to school in the fall after being on summer break, we have to reteach some concepts, because there has been something that has taken place in the summer that has caused children to forget some of what they learned in the spring. So we reteach that. Other things go in this category, like long-term illnesses, or I would say that COVID would probably go into this category. It's causing actual learning loss. Now, to the right of that, up to 0.4, we have learning that is representing learning gains, but it's inadequate. In other words, you're not getting a full year's growth in a full year's amount of time, right? So anything that's in this space here, it is effective. There is learning that's taking place. There is growth. But at the end of that second grade student, at the end of that year, they're not going to have the third grade reading level. They're not going to have the third grade quantile scores that they're looking for, So it's representing less than 1 year's growth in 1 year's amount of time. Now, 0.4 is kind of the magic number there. That's where you're getting exactly, it's the hinge point. It's where you're getting 1 year's growth in 1 year's amount of time. Now, to the right of that, these are very highly effective instructional strategies, okay? And anything to the right of 1 is even considered, a best practice. These are things that we want to see more of. We're getting more than 1 year's growth in 1 year's amount of time. Does anybody want to throw it in the chat? Toss it in. What do you think is what's the furthest to the right on this number line? Anybody want to take a guess? I'm not drinking because I'm thirsty. I'm drinking because I'm nervous. No, not the number. What practice? What does anybody want to guess? What circumstance or what practice goes in here? I'll just tell you, because it would be a hard one to guess. It's something that John Hattie calls collective teacher efficacy. What that means is the teacher's ability to do the thing that she sets out to do. In other words, her effectiveness. How resourceful, how skilled is that educator? What that means is there's all kinds of things that contribute to a child's education. The culture and climate of the school, the parental involvement, the technology that students have access, all that stuff matters. But a very skilled, a very talented teacher can overcome all kinds of things to make sure that her students are achieving. Johnny is dyslexic. And the teachers, like, okay, I know what to do with that. There's a Chrome extension that I can put on that will provide a font that's easier for Johnny to read. And I've got these active reading strategies that I can use. It's going to help him out. And, Billy is a mess. His dad's been missing for 10 years and his mom's trying. She's doing the best she can, but she's got her own problems that she's dealing with. She's got resources to deal with that. She can say, I'm making this off the top of my head, so forgive me if this is hard to follow, but she's like, I've got Pastor so-and-so down the road. He's part of the Boys and Girls Club. He would love to help Billy out. And he can come in, have lunch with him and be an adult role model and help that kid out. Do you see what I'm saying here? When the teacher is very skilled, when she's very talented, and she's got the things that she needs within herself, not some platforms and something, but she's skilled within herself, she can overcome any kind of obstacle that's thrown at her. That's what John Hattie's research. Now, when we look at these two models, which one represents what he calls CTE, collective teacher efficacy? which one of these looks more like CT? This platform model where the teachers are out here kind of around the outside peripherals, or this one that's making the investment in the educator? We believe this so much at Trafera that we're building out our educational program built around this concept. It has to be about educator empowerment. Let me show you our educational philosophy. I don't know why it's doing that. There we go. Our educational philosophy, I'm not going to read it to you. It's pretty simple, but this first sentence is so powerful. It says, at Trafera, we believe that technology can only improve the learning experience when we make people our number one investment. Not Chromebooks, not Promethean boards, not any of that stuff. Those things matter. Those things are very important, but nothing's more important than educators. We don't measure, look at this last sentence. We measure success not by how many devices we sell to schools, but how those devices are used to transform the learning environment. That's what we believe here. I'm going to show you this one last little thing. This is where we're going to end the webinar right here. We've built out some educational programmings that follow this model. The idea that our programs are designed to work around this model. Even before this model exists, we didn't know that this would be something that we would make a graphic of and publish or whatever. But we knew from the beginning that we wanted to make sure that every single thing that we're doing is investing back into people. And so one of the things that I'm really proud of is a library of lessons that we have called Trails. So if you've never seen Trails, I'll summarize it really easy for you. So if somebody were to ask you, what does technology look like if it's done exceptionally well? Like what does it look like to see technology integration that's beautifully done? Trails would be an example of an answer to that question. You know, we've written a library of resources, a library of lessons. There's probably 500, maybe closer to 600 now lessons that are in this library. And the idea is that this library would not be a platform that you would be, you know, committed to and be slave to forever, but it would be one of these content bubbles, just one of these areas that would give you a place where you could go that would serve for some inspiration, that would empower the teacher with ed tech tools and also with strategies. So I want to show you exactly how we're building this so you can see how it works. Here's kind of an example. I've taken the platform model here that we were looking at, and I'm zooming into it just to show you a tighter view. So in this view, we have the educator that's here. It's kind of still built around this, connecting to some ed tech tools, and she's using those ed tech tools to get the content. In a Trails lesson, it would look something like this. This is a Trails lesson that we wrote called Gravity and Air Resistance. The lesson itself, there's a 5th grade standard that says gravity is an invisible force that pulls objects down toward the center of the earth, right? So we're using that as a standard to design this lesson. And in teaching the lesson, we use a technology tool in there called Edpuzzle. Now, if you're not familiar with Edpuzzle, it's real simple. It's just like you can take a YouTube or any video that you find online, and you load it into this tool called Edpuzzle. And then Edpuzzle takes the video that you're playing and strategically puts pauses in wherever you want them so that the student can't just sit there passively and watch the YouTube video. They have the video will pause, and then it won't play forward until the student engages with that video, either by answering a question or by taking notes or whatever you want the student to do, but they have to engage in that video before it plays forward. It's a tool called Edpuzzle. Now, again, the hope here is not that we fall in love with this lesson on gravity and air resistance and you think, oh my gosh, I have to go back to Trails a million more times and find, you know, more lessons like this. I hope you do love this lesson, and we've got 499 more really great ones, and that's awesome. But the goal here in the people model is not that Trails would be the thing that you live and die by, but instead that you would, after teaching that Trails lesson, you would pick up something from Edpuzzle and think, I can use that same technology that I bought from Trafera or wherever it is that you bought it. I can use that same technology tool to go out and connect with content of my own, some other lessons that I've wrote, or some other Trails lesson, or whatever it is, that the other things that you're finding. And the point here, again, I've said this before, I'll say it again as we end. The idea here is we're keeping the very main thing, that's teachers. Notice one other thing about this model is that the arrows are flowing both ways, right? In this case, not only is the teacher using Edpuzzle to teach the content, but then the content is flowing knowledge back to the educator. If you've never used Edpuzzle in this lesson, there's a little link that says, hey, you're new to Edpuzzle. Click this. We'll show you around. We'll give you a little tutorial for how it works. And so as you're using these high quality instructional resources, you're also gaining skills that you can use to connect to more content of your own choosing. I wish I had a mic. I want to drop it. That's what I feel like I need to do right now. I'm going to stop there and check in. Kate, how are we doing? Questions, comments, or rude remarks?
We've had a lot of comments. We've had a lot of comments and a couple questions. So, Jenny, I'll start with questions and then I'll get into some of the comments. So Jenny asks about Trails. Do you have educational programming example lessons that are related to the library curriculum, and in particular the topics taught in elementary during the student library time?
Yes. So we do have content for library media specialists. Yes. Grade levels, Trails is like lately I've been saying K-8. However, it is K-12. And every time I go back and look at that, so I'm not in it every single day. We have staff people that are in it every single day. And every time I go back in to log in and look at it, there's more and more high school curriculum. So I would say now that I could confidently say it's a K-12 kind of platform. However, there are more instructional resources for K-8 for sure. I noticed that Chad made an important note in the comments, is this is not something that Trefera sells. We provide it free of charge to our customers, but whether you'll see at the exit survey here at the end, whether you're a customer of ours or not, I want you to see Trails, because I think this is an inspirational concept. It's an inspirational model. And I want everybody, whether you're our customer or not, to see how this model is using content to also empower educators and to grow their ability to be effective in their practice.
There were a lot of comments in the chat throughout your presentation about this people model being kind of a nightmare for administrations. Teachers are kind of running wild with all this content that they're using. Do you have any maybe like response to that, or advice on how to kind of keep that within reasonable boundaries, or
yeah, so
how to be realistic with this people model in practice?
Yeah, so at any school district, they're going to have what's called approved instructional resources. There's normally a committee that'll do that. They'll say, this is our official adopted curriculum that's probably provided from somebody like Pearson or McGraw-Hill or some similar kind of thing. And then they'll have supplementary resources that are also vetted and approved that they can use to supplement that. So, yeah, I mean, I see that I'm part of those discussions, and in previous jobs, I was always on those committees that would do that. And to whoever, I don't know, I'd have to go back through and scroll back through and read the comments in context, but yeah, we do have to be concerned, because one of the things that comes up in my mind is like teachers pay teachers. Sometimes that stuff is good, sometimes it is a nightmare, and so yeah, you want to be careful to make sure whatever kinds of supplementary instructional resources that you're pulling in have credit, and have been thoroughly vetted and approved. It was one of the things that we take a lot of pride in Trails is nothing goes into the library that's not been read several times. The girl named Leanne Lindsay, some people may know Leanne. She is an ISTE board member. She's the original author of the ISTE standards. she's also the person who reads our content to make sure it's actually standards aligned with ISTE standards. No one knows it better than she does. The same thing is true with, like, we do our trail guides according to Universal Design for Learning. Well, we have PhDs in instructional design with special ed emphasis that read our stuff to make sure that, we're doing what we say we're doing, that our lessons really are accessible. What else, Kate?
Sorry, I was just responding.
No, it's
to
fine.
some stuff in the chat. How would this model flow from year to year for students?
Who asked that?
Dan.
I'd like to understand the question a little better.
Dan Perry.
And do you want to unmute and talk about that?
Sure. I guess I started to add some more and I had to enter by accident, but
Yeah.
just like on the model, if any curriculum you get, it seems like it flows from one year to another and it keeps students on the same task. And then just if one teacher's going this model and then the next year they go something completely different, do you see that being a problem with like an end result of where they get to if they're starting over from year to year?
I think whether nowadays it seems like a standardized assessment, it's such an awful term, and I agree. I think our kids are over tested. However, I think that's where the value of those things come into play. So we have regardless of where we're getting our content from, is it coming from this resource or that resource or whatever? One thing that stays the same, Dan, in both of these models, the standard that we are setting for student expectations does not change regardless if we're on the people model or the platform model. Doesn't change. We're still saying that at the end of third grade, our students need to be able to multiply to 3-digit numbers. That doesn't change. At the end of freshman year algebra, we still need to solve systems of equations, right? Or whatever. I'm using math because I'm a math teacher, but you could put whatever you want to in there. So those standards do not change. What changes is where we're finding the strategies that we're using to connect with content and what that content is. And I started by talking about standardized assessments. I think as an assessment.
Oh, looks like we lost Josh. Sounded like he was really getting into something back there. I am going to launch the exit survey in case he's not able to hop back in here and get those questions answered. If you do have questions for Josh, he can be reached. I'll put his email address in the chat right now so that you can email him any more questions that you might have. Otherwise, oh, he came back. You're on mute, bud.
That's so weird, man. I was nailing it. I was right in the middle of something. Any other questions? I hope that I answered that the way you were thinking, Dan.
Yeah, you cleared it up. Thank you.
Great.
I went ahead and I launched the exit survey for those of you who have to get going. Like I said at the beginning, that's our way of kind of knowing that you are interested in coffee, which obviously you are. So please take that before you head out. Otherwise, if you have questions, you can unmute yourself. You can keep asking them in the chat. We're going to be around here to answer any questions you might have about this presentation for the next 20-ish minutes if you need us. So, Josh, are you able to kind of finish the thought that you were saying when you cut out?
I think that was it. I mean, I think it's, we do need some standardization, some uniformity. And I don't think the uniformity has to be anything that is constricting in terms of this teacher's creative freedom. I think we do uniformity on the standard. We measure students to make sure that they are gaining mastery of those standards. But I think creative freedom is where, there's a saying that says we're really fixed in our message, or excuse me, we're fixed in our message, but flexible in our methods. Really fixed in our message. Like, what is it that we're trying to get students to do, but we're flexible in our methods.
Awesome. We've also gotten some kind of tough technical questions about trails, so Carolyn was asking about being whitelisted. And like I said in the chat, if you are a current Trafera customer, we try really hard to keep our whitelist up to date with people who are kind of coming into our system. So hopefully you're able to just go in there and log in with your school domain that your school purchased through Trafera with. If you have trouble logging in with that, you can email. I think there is a submit a request button on there, or something like that. Otherwise, you can email. I'll put an email that you can message to in the follow-up email for this presentation, just so you don't get all these emails mixed up. But there are ways to kind of ask to get access if you are a current customer kind of struggling to get logged in. Otherwise, we do have 90-day demos that are available for free to non-customers, and those are really great if you are just kind of interested in seeing what Josh is talking about when it comes to setting teachers up with the skills and the resources they need to kind of to start, like you said, beautifully integrating technology in their classroom.
I have a question about the demo, because I'm in a weird situation where I purposely took like a non-teaching to finish up my grad school, and I'm hopping back and forth between Tennessee and Virginia. But where I'm working, I was hired as part of project graduation because of my past teaching experience, and I still have my teacher certificate. And so I'm in a school system, but I'm not technically officially a teacher again yet. Would I still be allowed to do the 90-day demo? And plus, I don't know where I'm going to end up teaching position, because I may end up somewhere way further in Virginia.
We want people to try it out as much as they want to try it out. So if you want access, you can definitely get access to that 90-day demo. No problem.
Okay.
No problem.
Thank you.
And we'd love to get any feedback. If anyone does do the demo and tries out the lessons, please let us know what you're thinking about them, because it's kind of a new thing that we launched last year, and we hope that people are finding them useful, and feedback is a huge part of that process. So if you do the demo, be sure to give us some feedback on what you're trying out. I don't see any more questions in the chat. If anyone wants to come unmuted to ask anything of Josh about trails, about his presentation, about, I don't know, Josh's illustrious music career. Feel free to do so. Otherwise, as long as you took that survey, you're free. You're free. That's the end of class bell.
Yeah, that's right. We need a bell. That would kind of signal in.
Well, we talked about you having kind of walk-off music. So.
Oh yeah.
Maybe we'll do a poll next time on whether we should get a bell or if we should do walk-off music.
I like walk-off music. That sounds great. Bye, everyone. I see some people are saying bye in the chat.
Here. Thank you so much for swinging in. We hope we are going to have some more updated coffee and combo sessions for the upcoming months. They're not on the calendar yet, but we are getting more put in place, and we will see you with those.
Hey, Kate.
Yeah, Al.
Before you end, yeah. I did see a question. What is the website to get the demo?
Oh, there is not a website to get the demo. It's in the exit survey. If you're interested in getting the demo, just indicate that on the survey, and we will work on getting that just on the back end, getting that all set up for you, and we'll email you with follow-up.
I thought we had the form online.
Oh.
Okay.
We probably do. We probably do have like a requested demo on there, Al, but it's also in this exit survey as well.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much.
Elsie, Joe, Sue, Soju.